It's kind of a crazy time. Typically, at this point, you're through with the bowl season. If you're not part of the either if you're not part of the playoffs or if you're not part of the national championship game, there's a little bit of a lull between the time that the season ends and then the late signing period in February. But for Oklahoma, with all the changes and everything going on, I think it's going to probably continue continue to be a little bit of a whirlwind between now and probably now between spring ball with the transfer portal being what it is.
Absolutely. So we talked about it certainly once Lincoln Riley left Oklahoma, how that might affect Caleb Williams, because the recruiting process is partially about and a large portion about, depending on the player, that particular player's attachment and relationship that was built up with their position coach, or for a quarterback head coach relationship, and that Caleb Williams may want to make the decision to go to USC in particular. Now he hasn't announced that, but he has announced that he's going into the transfer portal. We know that most players that do that do end up leaving the school and moving on, but at the same time, it's the transfer portal. It doesn't mean that they have transferred. Caleb Williams was very specific about, of course, saying all the niceties about his experience at Oklahoma, but also stating that Oklahoma was still an option. But for these players to explore other options under the guidelines that are set, they have to enter the transfer portal to have that contact and to explore other universities. And so that's the route he's going.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think this was something, that when you listen to some of his comments after the Alamo Bowl, when he was very, really non-willing to talk about his future, I think a lot of people thought that this was coming. And, and he's to your point, Mark, he's saying all the right things. I think he's saying, that certainly one of the options would be to come back to Oklahoma, but he wanted to evaluate his options and things like that. And you can't really blame the kid. I think he committed to Riley more so probably than he committed to Oklahoma. He's not a local kid; he's a Washington D.C. kid, so he's probably, I mean, he's fully ingrained in the culture of Oklahoma now. But coming to Oklahoma, he's probably as far away from really understanding the culture of Oklahoma football and the kind of the regional side of it. So yeah, certainly don't blame him. I think at the end of the day, don't really blame a lot of these kids unless it's unless you're one of those situations where it just doesn't make sense for you to transfer somewhere else. But for him, I think what he's saying is he wants to be able to entertain other offers, and I think, and this is probably where the speculation begins, Mark. What when he's when he looks at other offers, what is he looking at? Is he looking at what him and his family are saying? He very much wants to be he wants to be a guy that wants to be put in the best position for him to become a first round draft pick. I think he's not really been shy about saying that. His father's not really been shy about saying that either. So is it that, or is how much of a factor is NIL in this? There was rumors that there was a couple of schools that could have put together packages in the neighborhood of $2 million for him from an NIL perspective. None of those have been really substantiated by anybody, by anybody other than just kind of internet rumor type of things. Um, but yeah, I fully expect, you're right on. There are most players that enter the transfer portal. Obviously, it's their intention to move on. However, they could be, wooed and recruited back to the school that they were at. I would expect that he probably goes ahead and moves on. Mark, I think, there's a chance that he could certainly come back, and I think, obviously with Oklahoma pulling the trigger very, very quickly on Dylan Gabriel yesterday, that signs probably point to, the coaching staff feels like it's probably a long shot that Caleb decides to come back. I think there's some, USC is the team that I think most people think of. However, I don't know that he's necessary. I don't know. I wouldn't necessarily say USC is the favorite right now. I've heard some. I think I would say, based on some speculation that I've heard yesterday, I would say Miami might be a landing spot, because there's thoughts that Joe Brady is going to come over and be the offensive coordinator. Caleb had a very, very good relationship with Joe Brady through the recruiting process. So I think initially there was some rumor that Oklahoma might be looking at entertaining bringing Joe Brady on as the offensive coordinator, but obviously ultimately they decided on Jeff Levy. But I think that's a landing spot that's really kind of gaining some momentum. USC and Georgia are a couple of others that I've heard. Texas A&M is another one that I've heard as well. So yeah, ultimately, I think he's going to do what he feels is best for him, his family, and his situation, and what's going to get him to the next level as quickly as possible. I don't know if it's, Oklahoma has a really, really good track record, obviously, for getting quarterbacks in the NFL. They've got 3 starting quarterbacks right now, in the that they've had out of their last 4 quarterbacks that have played at the school. So you kind of come to that conversation. Is that more about the system at Oklahoma, or is that more about Lincoln Riley? And I think the jury's probably still out, and that's probably a big reason why he's elected to go to the portal. I think on one side of it, you've seen some development from quarterbacks at the University of Oklahoma, obviously with Baker Mayfield, Jalen Hurts, Kyler Murray, and such. But at the same time, you've seen some, what another interesting thing that I didn't even really think about, but I saw this yesterday. Every single quarterback that Lincoln Riley has recruited, not talking transfers, just simply recruited, has now transferred out of the program. Whether that be Tanner Mordecai, or whether that be Chandler Morris, and now Caleb Williams. There's been quite a few. So at the end of like I said, at the end of the day, he wants to go to a place where things gives him the best opportunity to be successful at the next level. And maybe he doesn't necessarily think Levy in Oklahoma's offense now is the right fit for him. So I think Oklahoma probably goes forward. Now, obviously, if he decides to come back, they would, without a doubt, welcome him with open arms. But I think right now the odds are pretty long towards him coming back to Oklahoma, in my opinion.